My name is Arlette. I'm 29, and even now, the scent of roasted turkey makes my chest tighten. That smell always takes me back to the night everything broke. Thanksgiving, when my brother stood up in the middle of dinner and casually revealed that our parents had quietly handed him the company I created and that I was being cut out entirely. We were all gathered around my parents' long oak dining table, the same table where I had once spread out invoices, contracts, and my laptop while everyone else laughed and watched football. The candles flickered softly, almost like they sensed what was about to unfold. My brother cleared his throat with that polished confidence he always had. He adjusted his perfectly fitted suit, raised his glass, and spoke loudly enough to silence every conversation in the room. "Before we eat," he said, "I just want to thank Mom and Dad for trusting me and for officially giving me the company." Then he smiled, a sharp, deliberate smile, and added, "Arlette won't be involved anymore." I felt the heat rise behind my eyes. Not shock. I wasn't surprised. Betrayal has a way of announcing itself long before the moment arrives. But the timing? That was intentional. It was meant to humiliate. My parents didn't even look at me. Not when he spoke, not when he said I was getting nothing, as if the decision had already been finalized somewhere behind closed doors, and I was just now being informed. But that company? It was mine. I built it from nothing, working out of a cold, cramped studio with a borrowed desk, surviving on cheap coffee and sheer determination. I worked nights, weekends, every spare hour I had. Meanwhile, my brother was figuring himself out, funded by the very money I was earning. And now here he was, standing tall like he had written the entire story himself. Memories flooded my mind. My first client, the one I convinced to take a risk on me when I barely knew what I was doing. The contracts I negotiated with my hands trembling under the table. The weeks I paid my employees before paying myself because I couldn't bear the thought of letting them down. All of it. And across the table, my mother quietly dabbed her lips with a napkin, while my father stared down at the wood grain like it could somehow justify what he'd done. My brother kept talking, building his version of events, saying the company needed stability, saying it needed a real leader, saying he was the one to take it forward.
The air in the room grew thin. Forks paused midair, conversations died. Everyone felt it. Those moments when a family dinner turns into something else entirely, something heavier. My aunt glanced at me. My cousin coughed awkwardly. The silence was practically begging me to stay quiet, to accept it, to play my role. But I didn't. I picked up my glass of wine and took a slow sip, letting the cool edge of the glass ground me. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years: control. Because suddenly, the words that would define that night formed clearly in my mind. My brother stood up at Thanksgiving and announced our parents had secretly given him the company I built, and that I was getting nothing. So I set my glass down, looked straight at my father, and calmly said, "Should I tell them, or do you want to?" It hit the room like something breaking. For the first time all evening, my father looked at me, really looked at me, and in his eyes I saw panic, the kind that comes when secrets are about to be exposed. He stumbled over his words, talking about timing, about family, about gratitude, but it was too late. The room had already shifted. People were watching me now, and I could feel years of silence peeling away. I thought about the emails I had saved, the documents I had insisted on signing, even when my parents told me to keep things informal, the clauses I added late at night because I trusted written proof more than verbal promises. I remembered how my brother's name was nowhere to be found when it mattered, and conveniently appeared when it didn't. Their entire plan depended on me staying quiet, but I wasn't going to do that anymore. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Calm truth carries further than anger ever could. I let the silence stretch, long enough for the weight of the moment to settle over everyone. Then I asked again, gently, "Should I tell them, or do you want to?" My brother's confident smile faltered. The room leaned in. And in that suspended moment, I realized something powerful. Once the truth is invited in, it doesn't wait for permission. The silence that followed felt different, heavy, but no longer suffocating. My father tried to laugh it off, but it came out strained and hollow. My brother shifted uncomfortably, like he was starting to realize the ground beneath him wasn't as solid as he thought. I set my glass down and began. I told them the company wasn't some family effort like they like to claim. It was something I started alone at 23, with a loan I personally paid back. Every early contract listed me as the sole founder and owner. My parents came later, offering advice at first, which slowly turned into control. And my brother? His sudden leadership role had been arranged behind my back while I was busy negotiating our biggest expansion. I watched the room change as assumptions were replaced with facts. Relatives started asking questions my brother couldn't answer. My mother tried to interrupt, saying this wasn't appropriate, that Thanksgiving should be about unity. I calmly pointed out that they were the ones who chose this moment when they announced I was getting nothing, because unity built on lies isn't unity, it's control. My brother snapped, accusing me of exaggerating, saying the company needed someone stronger, someone like him. That's when I slid the folder I had brought across the table toward my father. Either you explain the signatures, I said, or I will. Inside were copies of everything: incorporation documents, ownership agreements, emails clearly stating I was the sole owner. As my father flipped through them, his posture changed. His shoulders sank under the weight of undeniable proof. My brother's confidence drained, replaced by frustration, then anger.
Someone at the table gasped when they realized he had been acting as interim CEO without any legal authority. Another relative muttered, "This is bad, really bad." I didn't enjoy their discomfort, but I didn't soften the truth either. I told them I had discovered the attempted transfer weeks ago, that I had already spoken to a lawyer, and that I had waited until Thanksgiving, hoping they would choose honesty over humiliation. They didn't, so I stopped protecting them. The room erupted. Voices overlapped. My brother argued that he had always been promised everything. My parents insisted they were just trying to keep peace. And I said it again and again. Peace without fairness isn't peace. It's forced silence. Eventually, my uncle stood up and told everyone to stop. He reminded them that facts mattered more than pride. And in that brief moment of quiet, my father finally admitted the truth. The company was legally mine. Any attempt to give it away would fail, and they had been counting on pressure to make me give in. Hearing it out loud felt like something closing and opening at the same time. I stood up, thanked everyone for listening, and said the rest would be handled through lawyers, not at the dinner table. Then I walked out. The cold night air hit my face as I stepped outside, my coat half-buttoned, my heart racing, but my back straight. And for the first time in years, I felt light. The weeks that followed weren't easy. There were angry messages, awkward apologies, and eventually silence. But the outcome was clear. My brother lost the illusion he had been living in. My parents lost the control they thought they had. And I gained something far more valuable than an apology: clarity. The company stabilized under leadership based on ability, not blood. And I learned that loyalty to family should never mean accepting betrayal as normal. Now, when people ask if I regret speaking up that night, I think back to the flickering candles, the untouched turkey, and the moment I calmly asked, "Should I tell them, or do you want to?" And I smile, because that one question changed everything. Not just for me, but for anyone who has ever been told to stay quiet to keep the peace. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been overlooked, pushed aside, or told you deserved nothing after giving everything, then stay with this channel. Subscribe, because there are more real, powerful stories coming about standing up, reclaiming your voice, and making sure the truth finally takes its rightful place at the table.